En Camino with Kid Hogg.
We don't talk about sport very often on this programme, but what with the Six Nations in full swing on this very day, we're going to talk rugby. And in the immediate aftermath of Spain's qualification for the 2027 World Cup in Australia, who better to speak to than ex-Spanish international, an original product of the Marbella Academy, currently player and strength coach for Sevilla Ciencias, Coy Hogg. Coy, hello.
Hello, good morning. What an introduction. Thank you very much. Very flattering.
Thank you very much for being with us today. So, short of a shock defeat by an unthinkable margin against Switzerland, Spain are through to the World Cup finals. How cool is that?
Yeah, I was actually going to correct you because while I was listening to your flattering introduction, Spain actually haven't qualified for the World Cup yet. So they need to beat Switzerland this weekend, who did lose to Georgia 110-0. So
dear, oh dear.
Hopefully, I mean, it's looking good, but who knows?
Is there time in a rugby match to score 110 points?
I don't know, but I watched the highlights of that game, and you know how highlights are normally they just show you the tries.
Mm.
Well, the highlights was like 15 minutes long.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you got all the tries in.
Bored.
Dear.
Yeah, lots of tries.
Oh, the poor Swiss. It's terrible. But anyway, you were in Madrid last Sunday to watch Spain secure their place, or virtually secure their place, in a match against the Netherlands. Was that a cause of unbridled joy? I'm imagining Central bouncing with enthusiasm.
It was a very special day, actually. It was the sun was out. It was warm. The stadium was packed. They actually sold out their tickets, which is really, really positive because lots of people are getting behind the team. The federation doing a really good job on social media and marketing, and they're selling themselves very well. And so much like in 15s and in 7s. The 7s team's doing really, really well at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
The day was pretty special. The Netherlands didn't put up much of a fight. Unfortunately, they were far inferior, and Spain came out on top. A bit of a lull in the second half. You know, the kind of the typical thing where if one team's far superior than the other, one of them kind of puts their arms down and then it kind of relaxes. So the tension of the game kind of comes out a little bit because you already know who's going to win.
Yeah.
But a very special day, yeah, and just one step away from finally playing in another World Cup.
Yeah. Any regrets that you might have retired from the international scene too early?
Yes, thank you.
You're sitting there going, "Oh, I wish I was on."
Yeah, well, I'm sure other people have kind of come up with a similar feeling of when you leave something behind and you kind of start a new path, and then you go back and watch what you used to do or something like that. Something you were passionate about, and you might still be involved with.
Yeah,
it pulls at the heartstrings a little bit.
Yeah, but particularly as you were part of the bitter disappointment 4 years ago when it was a different story. Spain shot themselves in the foot and were disqualified. Can you briefly remind us of that sad episode?
Yeah, so Spain, for the two previous World Cup cycles, Spain have been disqualified from both, and both of those times was because of fielding illegible players.
Mm-hmm.
So players who actually aren't qualified to play for Spain. So there were lots of French guys in the first one, which is now over 8 years ago. And then to qualify for the last World Cup, there was a South African called Gavin van der Berg who played and had actually forged a passport. And because he played in one of the qualification games, then the World Cup was taken away from Spain.
He forged his passport, or the Federation forged his passport?
He and his club did.
I see.
To gain a kind of competitive advantage, because he was down as a foreign player, and you have to do 3 full years in a country before you can represent their national team.
Mm-hmm.
And apart from representing their national team, it also gives you it means you don't take up an overseas spot, and any club only has a certain amount of overseas spots. So it's a competitive advantage to have more players registered as national players, if that makes sense.
Mm. Well, I was really, really happy to hear that Central was bouncing and at capacity this weekend. That's great. That shows that the game is in some sort of health, because of course Spain are part, for anyone who doesn't know, Spain are part of a second division in terms of European rugby nations. There is of course the Six Nations, but then there's the European Rugby Championship, which comprises, I didn't know this until I looked it up this morning, apparently 8 teams, Coy. Georgia, Portugal, Spain, Romania, Netherlands, Germany, Belgium, and Poland. So that's a sort of 8 nations.
So that's kind of, well, they have extended it this year because, for example, Poland and Switzerland are new. That's why they had such a horrible time. They played last year and didn't do very well either. And so it's kind of like the tier 2 Six Nations, if you want to look at it that kind of way. And then the new guys coming up, so Poland and Switzerland, they're probably bordering what you might call a tier 3 in terms of rugby nations. That they really haven't got that much international exposure at like quality level. But the idea is that World Rugby is trying to get more matches for more nations, and that way it's going to grow the sport, and the whole level of everyone is going to come up.
Yes. And there's still no promotion relegation from the Tier 2 European Rugby Championship to the Six Nations. Can you see the oxygen of this possibility answering some of the challenges that rugby has as a minor sport here in Spain? If that window was open and there was a possibility that the European Championship could send somebody up and indeed receive a relegation candidate, how that would bring the sport on in terms of its profile?
Yeah, I think it would do a lot for visibility because, for example, say if there was relegation this year, you might have, sorry for all the Welsh people out there, but you might have Wales coming down, for example, if they won the wooden spoon. Well, you don't win the wooden spoon, do you? I guess it's kind of given to you.
You get boiled with it. You get clobbered with it, yeah.
You can't give it back. Yeah, so then you'd have a fixture next season where Wales would go, or Spain would go and play at the Millennium, or Wales would come and play at Central, which would be huge for the game.
Yes.
But I do see it being still quite far off, unfortunately. I wish that was the case for nations like Georgia, who have basically just been hammering the rest of us in the Tier 2 Six Nations for years. But they don't have a look in because they're never going to make it into a Sevens Nations because it's too many. And if they did open up the trapdoor for relegation, then like if for example Wales were relegated, it would hurt Welsh rugby beyond repair, maybe, because suddenly they're playing against teams which don't create any money. There's no ticket sales in countries where rugby really isn't a big thing. So that divide, like it's kind of like a cultural divide, is still quite big, and it's also reflected by the level of playing on the field.
Talking of the state of the sport in Spain, in over a decade of playing rugby professionally here, do you have a sense that the sport's grown, that its foothold is more secure, and are more youth turning to rugby? What's your feeling on that?
I feel like it's a good question. I feel like the men's game came along quite a lot, maybe 5 years ago. The level made a big jump. So before there was 4 good teams and the rest of them were basically terrible. So you'd compete in 3 games of the season and the rest of them would be a washout.
These are the clubs, yeah?
Yeah, these are the clubs. Yeah, this is the top tier, which is called División de Honor, the Division of Honor, so as if it was like some old kind of Roman gladiator league.
I love it, yeah.
So that has improved massively. So now the kind of like the average level of play is much higher, and you don't have big blowouts in games generally, and the league's much more open to upsets for the underdogs and that kind of thing. So that's good on the men's side, but I wouldn't say that it's attracted many more international names or anything to the men's game, because basically we don't make enough money to be able to bring out any attractive names that would really bolster the image of the sport. But what has changed is the women's game. The women's game has exploded over the last 10 years and has become very, very, very strong. There's lots of girls in Spain now who are looking at rugby as like a real possibility of sport they might like to get into, and the women's level is actually quite good. So the women's 15 team have already qualified for their World Cup, which is next year in England and next summer. So the women's have been representing for quite some time. Unfortunately, the Spanish sevens team is doing really poorly at the moment, quite in contrast to the men. But there are lots more young girls involved with the sport, which is really good to see.
Good. Now I want to talk about women. Sorry.
Can I make a question?
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry. about girls playing rugby. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So to play, first thing, is there in Marbella here a club of girls rugby, team of girls playing rugby?
Yeah. So what happens with the girls who play at the moment? So up to under 16, girls and boys play in the same teams because actually women have a faster development age, so they will become more mature faster than the boys. So generally, the difference between the girls and the boys, say in under 14s, is that the girls are actually a little bit taller, a little bit stronger, and more developed. And then after under 16s, then they are divided. So if you are a parent of a young girl or you're listening to the radio, amazingly, around 16 years old, you want to go down and try, then go to Marbella Rugby Club, and there will be a space for you.
And is there a rugby team for women, like adult?
You have to look. I'm not sure if Marbella has a female senior team.
Okay.
Maybe Malaga might be your closest one if you're interested in playing.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I am, but I have a question because I have glasses. And I don't see without glasses. I guess I cannot play, can I?
You get. You'd be in the scrum.
In the where?
The scrum.
What is that?
The scrum is... Well, explain what the scrum is called. You don't really need to see anything in the scrum. You're sort of like
la mêlée.
A mole. La mêlée.
Yeah. Without glasses, I can be there. Okay. No,
you don't need to see very far.
Sorry?
Do you have contact lenses?
No, I can't. I can't put them because my eyes have a problem. I just can't have glasses. Or I have to surgery, but it's very expensive.
You can get sports glasses, which are specially made and kind of with an elastic band that come around the back of your head.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
And as long as they're approved by World Rugby and they're safe, then you can use them.
That's a really good look.
That's cool. Thank you.
With a gum shield as well, you'd look pretty scary.
Okay. Thank you, Koi. That was my question.
No worries.
Koi, just let's talk about you for the moment, because you're at the age where you need to consider life from the sideline rather than the pitch, and you're in something of a transition at your club, Ciencias in Seville. You're a player and strength coach, and so you have this dual role. How hectic is this?
It's full on. It's definitely full on, and it means that I've got to cover two jobs, and there's a few things that I would like to do in one thing or the other, which I can't do. So I have to make sacrifices from one way or another. But actually, all in all, it's quite a good combination to be able to manage. So I'm in charge of, as a strength and conditioning coach, I'm in charge of obviously all the gym and strength training programs. So there's no problem with that because I can lead them and take them at the same time. And then on the field sessions, I'm in charge of basically how fast the boys run. That's all managed by GPS, which I'll look at later. And then I take the team warm up, which is a part where I could be better involved as a player, but at that point I kind of prioritize the group, so I stay out of that. But I run the warm up, and then I jump in after the warm up's done. So I don't actually get to warm up myself. So I just have to kind of keep an eye on how my body feels for the first few minutes of the session before I start accelerating and things.
Yeah, but aren't you warming the bench in the early part of the game?
Am I warming the bench?
Yes. And
no, I'm starting at the moment.
You start. Okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's all super computerized, isn't it? You have these readouts. And like you said, you're talking about GPS. What does GPS measure?
Well, GPS is a global positioning system where, like, you have one in your phone. There'll be one in your car. They're used pretty much everywhere on loads of devices, and we wear them between our shoulder blades. And it's a way of, first of all, determining game demands. So in terms of a rugby match, during those 80 minutes, how far are you running? How fast are you running? How many collisions do you have? How many accelerations? What kind of accelerations they are? So you can map out what the game demands are, and then you can recreate that and design sessions based on those game demands, so that you can train and prepare and be ready for games.
Corby, we're running out of time, but I just wanted to talk to you about, well, we've mentioned women in sport, and in a much more concentrated role. In other words, you just have been the strength and conditioning coach. You've returned from a week with the Iberians. Who are the Iberians, and what did you do with them?
The Iberians is a Spanish franchise which is being developed for kind of a pre-selection, so pre-national team for up-and-coming players. So it's kind of like part of the pathway system now in Spain. So before you're called up to the main, the big squad, the main senior squads, then you can be called up to the Iberians. And they've got a few competition periods during the year, and this is one of them where we played against Benetton Rugby in Treviso in Italy. And so it was a full week of training and preparing, much like a team would do for the Six Nations, and then a trip to Italy and a game there.
And how did you get on?
Not that well, because our squad is very young and a development squad.
Right.
They played against most of the Italian senior female squad, but they did well. The final score was 11-28.
Oh, really? No, not too bad. Not a humbling experience in any way.
No, but it would be basically they dominated in the contacts because they had much heavier, much more mature girls.
Right. Koibi, it's been wonderful having you on the show. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And hasta la próxima.
Hasta la próxima.
Adiós.
Adiós.